The Russian missile system fires rockets every second. Tanks and military vehicles are parked on either side of the blasting artillery system, positioned among houses and near the town's railway system. The weapon is not working alone, though. Hovering tens of meters above it and recording the assault is a Ukrainian drone. The drone isn't a sophisticated military system, but a small commercial machine that anyone can buy. That's the point, ladies and gentlemen. Since Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine at the end of February, drones of all shapes and sizes have been used by both sides in the conflict. At one end of the scale are large military drones that can be used for aerial surveillance and to attack targets on the ground. In contrast, small commercial drones can be flown by people without any specific training and carried around in a suitcase-sized box. No, fuck that. In a lunchbox-sized box. Like in a, I mean, the latest commercial drones damn near fit in your pocket, actually, when folded. So to say a suitcase-sized box is quite an exaggeration. People can carry them on their person and in their jacket pockets very easily. While both types of drones have been used in previous conflicts, the current scale of small commercial drone use in Ukraine is unprecedented. Yes, as some very handsome white bald tech bro came in and told us many months ago that would happen. Actually, I remember that. Drone videos shared and posted to social media depict the brutality of the war and reveal what is happening during battles. Drones have captured fighting in the destroyed Ukrainian city of Bucha, with lines of tanks moving around streets and troops moving alongside them. Commercial drones have helped journalists document the sheer scale of destruction in Kyiv and Mariupol, flying over burnt-out buildings that have been reduced to rubble. Russian troops have been caught on camera allegedly shooting at citizens holding their hands in the air. Jesus. Drone videos show Ukrainian troops shelling Russian positions, monitoring their movements in real time, and ambushing Russian troops. In one video, a drone spots Russian military vehicles leaving troops behind. Wow. They run after the transport and fall in the snow. Oh, Jesus. In another, the drone hovers in the air and records a helicopter being shot down as it flies past. Quote, drones changed the way the war was supposed to be, says Valery Iakovenko, the founder of Ukrainian drone company Drone UA. Quote, it is all about intelligence, collecting and transferring data about enemy troops, movements and positions, collecting artillery fire. It's all about counter-saboteurs' actions. And it is, of course, search and rescue operations. That's a great point as well. Like, the search and rescue part is incredibly important as well. By the way, add in the fact that these drones are doing video. If the drones can get close enough to do any kind of facial grab of anybody, you combine that with our friend Charles's company, the Clearview AI, and now you can start identifying people. And holy smokes, is that going to be amazing when that's able to be done in real time? So that when you're flying a drone, you can identify people as you fly over them. That mark my words, that day is coming, and that's going to be amazing. So anyway, the guy from the Ukrainian company says he estimates that Ukrainian forces are operating more than, here's a trivia question. How many drones exactly do we think Ukraine are operating? That's a chance to play our favorite show. Please do join us if you're on stage for another exciting episode of Tech News Jeopardy. Yay! Okay, so how many drones exactly is Ukraine operating?
1,700.
I'll say 500.
Is it per day or is it
No,
in
total.
total?
In total, maybe.
In total. So
Give
I
it a
think
shot.
they say about 500, 100, about 500. I would say, no, I would say 2,000.
Messi wins. The total is actually 6,000.
Hey!
Wow.
I heard them say that they are sort of doing few hundreds a day. So I was just calculating. That's why I was asking you on a fly.
It's actually the article that I'm reading that I pinned to the top of the room says more than 6,000 drones for reconnaissance, and says these can link up with Elon Musk's Starlink satellite systems to upload footage. How fantastic is that? And then combine Elon Musk's Starlink system with Charles's Clearview, shit gets crazy cool very quickly. In 2014, drones became the center of attention of intelligence units, but their scale cannot be compared to what we see today. He says Russia first began the invasion of Ukraine in 2014 with its annexation of Crimea, blah, blah, blah. You get the idea. So there's an article that came out 8 hours ago that kind of proves Johan's point that drones are making a big difference in this battle between Ukraine and Russia, and that's in Ukraine, that's Ukraine's own words saying that, by the way. They're the ones saying it's making a big difference. So it's making a big difference when the one side who's benefiting says that this is making a big difference. So I'll take that as a prediction come true. I mean, why wouldn't I? That's kind of one of the big reasons we do this, is this whole process of figuring out, the art of connecting dots. It's a game. It's a puzzle. I love doing it. I've been doing it, subconsciously since I was a child. So, and I feel like the more that we do this as a group, the better we all can get at doing it. And I feel like it's an incredibly important skill that everybody should have. No one's really put a name on that form of education or type of intelligence of like dot connecting, but especially non-obvious
How how,
dots.
how about Taylorism?
No, I mean, to me, I've been very conscious of this for a very long time, and when if I only had one job interview, and I don't know, two. I only had two job interviews in my entire life, and one was at Twitter, basically, when there were 30 people. And the question is, what's your strength or whatever? I think is one of the best questions anyone can ever ask during a job interview. And I've been self-conscious of, perhaps I think my best strength is dot connecting, non-obvious dots. And I feel like that's an incredibly important skill. And I think definitely think it can be learned. And I think some people, the more you're conscious of it, and that to me is what a lot of what we do. And I do mean we with a capital W and a capital E. I feel like if we had to boil down technology around the world, it's hard to boil down because there's so many facets to it. But certainly one of the things we do every day is connect these dots between these articles, and from time to time that enables an opportunity for people to make predictions, and sometimes people do, and sometimes people are correct. Somebody made a really good one recently that I'm trying to remember. Was it Ken? Somebody had a really good one. Anyway,
Tyler,
yes.
hi.
Hey,
Good to see you guys. It's been
you
a
too.
couple weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, just back from Europe. So Elon Musk and et al., some friends, a couple years ago launched online academy called Synthesis. I don't know if you guys are, but I just signed my girls up for a
Yep.
couple of their
Yep.
courses, and
That's right.
that is the premise. Yeah, it's sort of the premise is like connecting the dots. And you're right; they're trying to develop a whole curriculum around that very thing. And it's more than just gameplay or gamifying something to turn it into education. It truly is like creating those synapses within the brain of these kids. And obviously they gear the different levels toward, age specific groups. I mean, there's kids as young as, 5, 6 years old enrolled in some of the coursework, and then my kids age that are like middle schoolers. But I do think like that that is a special skill that, as you say, you've had since you were little. But I think it's becoming more and more of a thing that's in demand in terms of children, how they learn right now, so that this is the way they can, grow into adulthood. Already, this is the way everything is meant to be, is about connecting the dots and finding the gaps.
Right. Let me pin.
To tie into that, there's another course that has been taken out of curriculum I sort of regret, and that's critical thinking. So two things Dr. Jonathan Jefferson of Lesley University made forecasting and critical thinking, two courses that were prerequisites to any business course. And the forecasting class I took and enjoyed because what they did was they allowed you to take economics and counter position it against geopolitics and forecast the future exactly as you're saying. So they taught the students to connect the dots, and critical thinking was a prerequisite to that class because it taught you how to debate the points and really think deeply. Those things have been taken out of core curriculums in universities in Massachusetts. I'm sure they're not nationally, and that's at a disadvantage to us.
I want to make a quick point. I just pinned the synthesis.com website to the top of the clubhouse room, and it says where kids learn to solve problems together, kind of like we do here in Tech News. Synthesis challenges young critical thinkers. There it is right there in the first sentence, Sharon. You can't, critical thinking is absolutely a fundamental piece of this. Synthesis challenges young critical thinkers through complex games and simulations. Now enrolling ages 6 to 14. You can enter your email. There's prices. You can learn more. You can do it online. And then, if I remember correctly, you can do some of this online. And it says, we're not trying to get your child ahead in the current school system. We give them the skills and agency to create the future they want. In synthesis, your child will learn to do the following three things. Number one, think critically. Again, to Sharon's point. At Synthesis, kids learn how to think, not what to think. Love that. Number two, learn by doing. Our real-world simulations are uniquely designed to ignite curiosity and fun. Number three, find meaningful friendships, meet the next generation of innovators and creators from around the globe. Why Synthesis? And then it says what schools don't teach, and it says, I believe Synthesis builds these schools like no other education. That the goal was to develop students who are enthralled by complexity and solving for the unknowns. And Synthesis is the most innovative learning experience that's from that school. It is designed to cultivate student voice, strategic thinking, and collaborative problem solving. Yeah, and indeed, I think when you really get into this process, you start to understand the value of working with other people who have complementary or auxiliary or problem solving skills, that's really what we do in Tech News. Now we're really touching on what we do and why we're all so loyal to this ritual that we do each day, and myself especially. It's because I'm aware of what my limitations are. I can't possibly know what each of the people on stage knows. God knows, none of us know. Aaron has an incredibly deep domain expertise in his area. So does Carl, so does Ben and Robert and Sharon and Erwin and Valerie and Anna Marie and everybody, Vinay, all of it. I mean, this is that's how the magic sauce gets made. Is, as much as I like connecting dots, it's only by our own geographical diversity and life experience diversity and knowledge-based diversities that enable us and afford us the opportunities to really make a lot of interesting connections. So thank you. My personal thanks to everybody for indulging in this process of synthesizing our collective knowledges in what seems to be an incredibly similar way to what Elon Musk's school describes what the kids do, about how, it's, as it says, it's designed to cultivate strategic thinking and collaborative problem solving, because you're not going to solve the biggest problems by yourself unless you're fucking Newton or somebody like that, or Einstein. So, and I'm needless to say, I'm neither of those. So
It's
that's
actually kind of special that they are kind of expanding their. I mean, it was like they had like a soft launch, and now they've really kind of been really promoting it all over the place. So I'm not sure what the enrollment is now, but I do think coming where it is at what we're hopeful is maybe that tipping point or turning point of the pandemic. There are so many kids that have tremendous capacity to innovate and to be problem solvers. But for many kids, they don't have the social skills to do that well. And so I think to be fair, in full disclosure, it's one of the reasons I enrolled my kids in some of the coursework is because they've become a little bit withdrawn during COVID.
Sure.
And it was a function of just, what the kids had to go through during pandemic and having to learn at home and all of that. So this idea that you put a bunch of kids who kind of, don't know each other and give them a problem to solve together. Again, it's online, not in person,
Right.
but the whole setup is meant for them to engage with their fellow humans to
Right.
solve something. And I think the timing is really good for them. And I hope that and I can report back in a month, but right now I'm just glad that they have an opportunity like this for kids to put that kind of collaborative hat on. So
I got to
it'll be
say something.
interesting.
I got to jump in with
Mhm.
something, which is I think of myself as having only a very few number of skills, and so at the risk of further indulging this point, but it's serving a bigger point that I'm trying to make here, which is I realize about myself I'm unskilled at 99% of things, but one reputation that I do have in this room, I have a reputation, for connecting dots, as we were just talking about. Prior to ever doing tech news, one of my reputations, which the Swedish Sarah will know, and people who know me in real life will know, like Annika or Sarah or the Swedes, for example, is my kind of like the way that I introduce people to each other, I guess you could say, or networking, or kind of connecting people more so than dots. So like I meet somebody who sends me an email and they tell me what they're doing, and I think the first thought that goes through my mind is, who should this person meet? I know they're asking me for a favor. I'm not interested in helping their favor. I'm more interested in, 99% of the time, I'm not going to be able to help this person, and certainly not as well as somebody else that I know. So my first thought is not, how can I help this person myself? It's, who do I know who could be the best at helping this person? And I don't know why, but that's just been a default of mine for as long as I can remember. And I often get complimented on that, which is connecting people, which to me is in some ways no different than connecting dots. I feel like they're essentially versions of the same coin, or two sides of the same coin. And it's just knowing, and again, it kind of speaks to that website of like, I feel like if you're trying to do serious problem solving, one of the first steps to take is deciding who else should be in the conversation. To whose skills do we need on this problem?
And Tyler, this that you are saying is so right, because it is so invaluable when you do this. It's such an important part of making things happen, and so many people don't even realize the knock-on effect it has. So when you think that, oh, this person, I know because I do this myself a lot, and then I think one recognizes it in each other, that
Right.
it's an invaluable part of making things happen. It
Right.
has such a knock-on effect.
Right. Personally, well, there's another skill involved as well. Sorry to interrupt you, Robert. Just to put a cherry on top, there's nothing I love more than knowing there's somebody that needs to be part of a conversation, and the asking them to participate in a way where, assuming that it's worthy of their time and their expertise, that you have and I often phrase it in this way. For those who don't know, here's just one of my, I often say, hey, you have a real gift for X, and here's what we're doing. And, there's just, it seems like your gift for X would so perfectly complement this group task that we're all working on. Would you be willing to, contribute some of your gift that God gave you to our, our little expedition here? And 9 times out of 10, they accept, because they acknowledge that they know internally, if you're being very sincere, if you're not kissing ass and you're being very sincere, that we know you have this gift for X, whatever that X is in this case, and generally, if they agree that and they know you're not kissing their ass, they know that you're being very sincere, and they know that what they can do can be helpful. I think it is a truthism that people who have gifts, and I don't like that term, but like people who have deep abilities in one capacity or another, and they know that they're really good at what they do, and they know they're uniquely good at what they do, they don't necessarily the ones who are really genuinely uniquely good at what they do, like really the best at what they do, they don't even really care to profit from it, honestly, most of them. And they understand that they have the capacity to make a positive change happen as a result of what they're able to do and participate in something. They'll often participate in it, and that to me is a beautiful, beautiful part of humanity. I don't know, it's some weird social anthropological thing that we as humans do when we realize we're the missing link in somebody else's some other group's bonfire. We're the extra ingredient that makes it go, really explode. It's just a beautiful thing, and I love it when you do get somebody saying, "Oh yeah, count me, and I'll be at the next meeting, or I'll join the call, or whatever." And nothing makes me happier than when those things happen. And it's 9 times out of 10 it is correct. We did assess correctly that they were the missing ingredient. But anywho, so enough ranting about all that. So there's actually a bunch of good. We got to get into the tech news. And before we get to the tech news, we've got to do the non-tech news. And on the non-tech news, there was a bit of interesting Ukraine stuff that happened other than the personal drone story that we just read from Wired. And some of these Ukraine-related stories are as follows. One of them is that Zelensky did another really moving video that'll probably be preserved for eternity. And people will look back on these like people look back on World War II stuff. And it says, "We are fighting for our children's freedom, and therefore we will win." God damn, this guy is so fucking good at these one-liners. Holy shit. I mean, this is the kind, this is like Hollywood script writing. This is, people win awards for shit like that. Like, marketing companies get campaigns for tens of millions of dollars for writing lines like that. Jesus Christ, that's a great line. Like, you would have to hire Apple's, agency, Chiat Day, or, these super award-winning, they all go to Cannes Festival. I know everyone knows about the Cannes Film Festival. There's another Cannes Festival for, like, digital marketing and stuff. Like, those types of, people win big awards and big contracts for lines like that. "We are fighting for our children's freedom, and therefore we will win." God damn. Zelensky says.
Tyler, but these people, they believe, right? You just talked about authenticity. That's why they can communicate this way.
Yeah.
And also, I think Zelensky is surrounded by an incredible team. I think he's amazing, but also the team around just as amazing.
Yeah. Here to finish his quote. We will never forget that what our ancestors did in the World War II, which killed more than 8 million Ukrainians. Very soon there will be 2 victory days in Ukraine, and someone won't have any. We won then, we will win now. Just, God, so
actually that clip is I put it in the same as Martin Luther. Sorry for swearing in the church, but this is a speech that we will remember and we will talk about after the war as well. Johan Dunn.
Yeah. You're talking about "I Have a Dream"? I find the answer.
Yeah, or Ich bin in Berlin. I feel that they are on the same. Over history, we will probably see them as the same way.
Yeah. There's people gushing all over it in the Reddit comments. Okay, so the next.
Yeah, I think just I
Sorry,
mean,
just
it
quickly.
could, of course, be literally written by Hollywood scriptwriters.
Yeah, no, I know, but and that's the weird thing is he has his acting background and everything. He understands the power of lines like this, and fuck though, man, that's just they got someone that's like I said, award winning, and like you said, the person who talked about authenticity nails it because you're right. It's when you're able to to harness the power of authenticity in that kind of way, it can move people. It's just fuck. Anyway, sorry. Whoever wanted to make a comment, go ahead.
I was just going to say that they are well understanding, that they are very cognizant of how quickly the news cycle moves, how quickly even the worst tragedies in the world can get swept under the carpet, and that when you want to keep a set of values, or you want to keep a movement alive, it needs a figurehead. And Zelensky has turned out to be an incredibly charismatic and talented figurehead through a combination of, I imagine, like was said, the people around him, and through his own skill as an orator and on reflecting on things, and it has a measurable. It might seem ridiculous to some people that they might be putting effort behind their social media campaign, and they really are. They're really trying to craft the narrative, but it's creating a measurable response. Countries around the world, the populations have been, and we've all seen it. And I'm not saying anything that nobody here doesn't know. Is that they've been applying pressure to their governments that has resulted in actual financial aid and military aid. So this is a very well orchestrated plan. That's serving them brilliantly, and kudos to them.
Yeah. So the next article I wanted to share on the topic is from The Guardian. It says Putin's actions in Ukraine bring shame on Russia, says G7. Statement to mark 77th anniversary of the end of the Second World War condemns an attack on the free world. So what do they mean by the G7? Here it is. The G7 statement said, quote, through its invasion of and actions in Ukraine since 2014, Russia has violated the international rules-based order, particularly the UN Charter, conceived after the Second World War to spare successive generations from the scourge of war. President Putin and his regime now choose to invade Ukraine in an unprovoked war of aggression against a sovereign country. His actions bring shame on Russia and the historic sacrifices of its people. Ouch. And very quickly, Trudeau, who's the Prime Minister of Canada, just did a surprise appearance in Kyiv. And while there, he says Putin responsible for heinous war crimes during his surprise visit to Ukraine. And Jill Biden, the wife of Joe Biden, made a surprise visit to Ukraine and met Zelensky's first lady. So no doubt that's crafty, that's clever. I mean, it would be maybe a bridge too far for Joe Biden to get there, but maybe this is a test. Jill going there, and they continue to kind of escalate. You had Boris Johnson there. Now you've got France there. The only thing left at this point is for Joe Biden himself to go there.
That's a bit mean, though. Send my wife, see if she gets blown up. If she doesn't, I'll go. It's a bit of a mean trick.
On Mother's Day.
True, but it might be cheap. Might be cheaper than divorce, Ben.
Jesus. On Mother's
Helen,
Day.
In all seriousness, though.
Right?
Oh, wait. I made a joke about Mother's Day. Here's the quote. Quote, I wanted to come on Mother's Day. The U.S. First Lady told Zelensky. Actually, to his wife, Zelenska, because in that part of the world, the last name changes based on if it's the husband or wife in the partnership. So Zelenska is the last name of Zelensky's partner. So I thought it was important to show the Ukrainian people that this war has to stop, and this war has been brutal, and that the people of the United States stand with the people of Ukraine. So God bless her for going on Mother's Day, where that does show something, by the way. She could have gone whenever the hell she wanted to do the to position it in that framing actually does show an additional level of compassion, I guess, for lack of a better word, or empathy or whatever that she would do.
And also remember yesterday was Victory in Europe Day. I know this is the big day in the Russian Federation, but yesterday was VE Day.
So
Did you bring up? Sorry, I just joined. Did you bring up the fact that the Ukrainians hacked all of Russian TV
Yeah,
for the
I
four,
wanted
four
to bring
hours?
it up too. Yeah.
Yeah,
hold that
you
thought.
already
Let's get
covered
to
it.
that. Let's hold. No, we haven't covered that. Hold that thought. I'm just going to read Zelenska's response to Mrs. Biden, and then we'll get into that. It says Zelenska thanked Jill Biden for her courageous act of coming over on Mother's Day and said, quote, "We understand what it takes for the U.S. First Lady to come here during a war when military actions are taking place every day, where the air sirens are happening every day, even today." So beautiful. What a cool thing. So, John, thank you for sharing that. Let's go further into that one about the Ukraine
Yeah,
hacked
so
all the TV
for
networks.
for 4 hours, the programming guide, every single channel in the programming guide basically said, "You have blood on your hands. TV lies. Putin lies. You've killed thousands of innocent Ukrainians and hundreds of innocent children." Even including children's TV shows. So this was a major, major hack of all the TV media in Russia. It took them 4 hours to turn it all off. Um, but by then, a huge number of Russians presumably had seen that in the run up to Putin's big celebration day.
Mm. So, there's another special guest that went to Kyiv this weekend. So you had Justin Trudeau, Jill Biden, and U2 made not only an appearance but a performance in the metro of Kyiv. And it says the Bono and the Edge. Oh, I guess it's not all of U2. It's Bono and the Edge. So two of the four, and they played a concert in the Kyiv metro for 40 minutes. The legendary Irish rock band said President Zelensky invited them to play in solidarity with Ukraine, and they did 40 minutes in the metro. Quote, "Your president leads the world in the case of freedom right now. The people of Ukraine are not just fighting for your own freedom. You're fighting for all of us who love freedom." Bono told a crowd of about 100 gathered inside the metro station. "We pray that you will enjoy some of that peace soon." And then they did a tweet saying that Zelensky invited us to perform in Kyiv as a show of solidarity with the Ukrainian people, and so that's what we've come to do. I got.
And they sung "Stand by Me," only they substituted Ukraine for me. So "Stand by Ukraine." The YouTube video is just glorious.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, I got to say, that's one of the coolest uh, moves that a band could make right about now, is to go over there and do something like that. Uh, I mean, why aren't other bands thinking creative? I mean, yeah, it's PR. U2 doesn't need the PR, honestly. Um, I don't think they were themselves were really doing. I don't think they really cared how it reflected on them. But why hasn't another group thought to do something like that?
Well, and why not have the equivalent of the World Aid Concert in support of Ukraine at scale, the way it was done
Right,
in support of others?
right.
I think it's imminent. I think it would be very powerful. I wish someone were organizing it for tomorrow.
Anyway, so Prime
One
Minister.
of the things here also is that U2 actually take quite a stand. We have all seen U2, the Wall, which was actually a message regarding the Iron Curtain. So this is, I think it was just brilliant of them to continue this. 30 years later, they are there fighting the bloody wall again. Yeah, these are heroes. Nobody of the other bands have done that.
Yeah, because this aligns with their brand. That's why
True.
this makes complete
Amen.
sense. And
Amen to that. Amen to that. Amen to that.
Well, and I would like to say that it goes beyond branding. I think Bono's the real deal, and I think the brand emerges from his passion and compassion, not the other way around.
Yeah, and by the way, it does take risking to some degree. It's a risky move. It's not something you do for purely for PR. People don't risk their lives for PR like that. So it's like
on that note, Tyler, is U2 or Bono, like their production company, distribution company, whatever, do they self-own it? Are they? Because my thought is when you said, why aren't more doing this? I imagine quite a few worried about legal sorts of reactions from their labels.
They get to do that kind of shit separate from any label input.
Really? Would they not be under, like, similar to sportsmen or whatever? They are under sort of restrictions of what they can and can't do in their personal time, so as
No,
to potentially not to
Nah,
potentially
they're
lose
bigger
their.
than their label. They're
they can do
bigger
what
than
they
their
want.
label.
They can do what they want in that regard.
Right. Okay.
So, last article I have on the Ukraine issue is that Russia hits U.S. supplied weapons at railway station in Ukraine. Where is that happening at? Obviously not in the Polish side of things. Russia's defense ministry said on Sunday it destroyed weapons and military equipment supplied by U.S. and other Western countries at a railway station near Ukrainian town of Soledar. There you go. High precision air launched missiles. Yeah, okay. So yeah, that's expected. Okay, now non-tech news. Last article, not Ukraine related, although somewhat Ukraine related. Yeah, it's a second order effect of Ukraine actually. It's from Reuters. Sweden's ruling Social Democrats, that's the party in charge at the moment, to decide on joining NATO on May 15th. So that's next week, and that's in line with.
And this is, but yeah, and this is, and the thing is that it's the day after Finland take their decision, and that's by
Oh,
plan.
I'll go
That'll
ahead
be
and
a
chalk
very
that.
eventful day.
I'll go ahead and chalk that up as two predictions in one show for today, because I did say very specifically that if Sweden does apply to NATO, they'll do it directly in conjunction with Finland, and indeed they are. So,
Tyler,
So
yeah.
one thing I really wanted to add, especially having this really iconic, world famous kind of music, is that it's just
Oh, and by the way, hang on, messy. Sorry.
okay.
By the way, let me finish with a new prediction, which is Sweden's decision on May 15th will be exactly the same decision Finland makes on May 14th. Go ahead, Messi. whatever
No,
Finland decides on May 14th, Sweden will decide themselves, all by themselves. Get it? On May 15th, 24 hours later. They're going to make their decision, quote unquote, which is also exactly, just coincidentally, going to be exactly without any difference, Finland's decision 24 hours preceding it. Sorry to interrupt.
that does
Go ahead.
make sense.
I was just gonna say that I think "We Are the World," the 1985 song that was made for the famine in Ethiopia, the country struggled for decades to shed that image. Like even me, when I was in Canada, everybody just talked to me and they say, "How did you survive? Was there food in that country? Is there a house to stay in?" All I'm trying to say was that that image couldn't even change with, export processing zones and
Right.
industrial parks,
Right.
even Calvin Klein coming
Right.
in to produce their products.
Amen.
So it really is sometimes very important how we package these things,
I
because I
agree.
think even when Ethiopia tries to move from aid to investment, it is just impossible. Even all the investors I try to
Yep.
get them to go to Africa, all they say
Yep.
is, "Oh, how do you invest in a country that you cannot even eat?" So a lot of us really do blame that music, that
Amen.
song, and a lot of people just attaching that to the country. That's all.
I agree. And we have. I want to blame America, and Americans need to take some responsibility on their complete and deep reluctance to understand global um, complexities the and I mean Americans are quite good at marketing, and so on that level they should totally understand that what would get people excited to help in a positive way a country like Ethiopia is greed, which is this country's got a lot of great shit going on, and the same way that we are starting to see considerable attention in some parts of Africa, like Nigeria around tech, for example, or even south parts of South Africa, parts of Kenya. People are getting excited. That's great. That is attracting a whole lot of people, and companies are starting to get excited about Africa. And as usual, China was 15 years ahead on that. So, I mean, I think that's the kind of counter. Uganda's hot as shit. I mean, there's Africa's might be on a percentage basis. If you want to, economic growth, it's the overdeveloped world. That's not. I think that should be a term. We have the underdeveloped or the developing world. I think we need to have the overdeveloped. Like there's parts of the world that are overly developed. They're too developed, and now they have a declining birth rate, and they're going to start having unique problems of their own. They're kind of over the hump and on the way down. I feel like that's a nat. By the way, that's itself. If forgive me for going off on a bit of a tangent here, but there's this faulty mentality that developing countries just continue to develop forever, and they get to a point where they go over the hump and over the peak. Ask any former empire. Everyone's got their time in the sun, and then they get the peak, and then they over to think. There's this cycle that Ray Dalio. This is the part of Ray Dalio's recent book that I totally agree with. Is that there are cycles. Ask the Greeks. Ask the Romans. Ask the fucking UK. Everyone, the Dutch. I mean, the Dutch kicked ass severely for Spain for a while. Was fucking the hot shit. So everyone reaches a peak. They go over the hump. They get a little too lazy, a little too comfortable. They start arguing about pointless shit about who has the best chef, and that's when you're fucked. When everyone's concerned about who's got. And by the way, that's not even a joke. There's actual historic high correlation, if you want to call it correlation. It's not. It is technically it is that when a country's at the peak of their grandiosity and start looking for trouble when they start celebrating their chefs. No joke. Throughout history, when a country starts celebrating their chefs, which by the way, turn on TV and tell me you don't find a famous chef on US TV right now. It's like a very common thing. And that is a strong indicator that countries has reached peak convenience. They're at the peak of convenience, and now it's going to get lazy and sloppy and messy and dirty, and they're going to go over the hump and over the falls. And my point, going back to the original point, is America owes Ethiopia a bit of an apology for not kind of being a little more thoughtful as to how do we actually craft the right narrative that will be most beneficial to Ethiopia. Because you're right, that Ethiopia, in the minds of a lot of people, was tarnished in a really negative way, and probably impeded a lot of others from participating and contributing in meaningful ways. I feel optimistic now that that's changing around Africa, and I feel like Africa is the most interesting place to grow on a percentage basis. So hopefully others can sing that song and push that narrative along.
Well, to that
what?
point, if I could put a sharper point on Messi's comments, because the Live Aid was really targeted at charity, and there's quite a abundant literature showing that charitable contributions pale in comparison to investment, job creation, and establishing sustainable commerce in these target countries. And so, to that extent, hopefully Bono and Sting and others who can put together the new Live Aid for Ukraine will couch it in the terms that Messi's implying, and that is, urgent help needed now, but long term, this is a great investment opportunity. Please invest in this country so that they can rebuild themselves and have the assistance of the world community in the investment strategy. And I think that message could be shaped very beautifully by something akin to the Live Aid concert that was done for Africa.
To me also, Johan, just to add, was it Johan? Um, just to add into that, it is amazing how all these high net worth individuals don't even bother when it comes to investment, right? We all jump in when it's crisis, which we should do. Everybody needs that type of help to get over that crisis. But when even Africa, like you said, Tyler, Nigeria and Kenya and others are coming up, a lot of African startups are struggling, even though they are doing great because there isn't even a lead investor. One of these people can become a lead investor and say, look, this country is this is investment destination, and actually jump in when it really matters and makes a difference when it's changing into sustainable development and investment instead of just always jumping over when it's crisis only. I'm done speaking.
And thus is why Belt and Road has filled in where the West has opted not to.
Great point. Yeah,
Can I?
because you know what? That's a great point. Was that Robert who said that? Who said that? That's like
Yeah, that
Robert.
was Robert. That was
Robert. That's
Robert.
brilliant. As much shit as we give China, and China, I mean, there is some strings attached with this Belt and Road, and it isn't all chocolates and roses. There's some thorns in those roses, but it is at least done in a. They're at least selling it under the right pretenses, which is economic development in meaningful ways and infrastructure projects and whatever. There might be trapdoors or whatever, and it might be shady and yeah. But at least they understand like the right approach to this is like, hey, you're the next hot thing, and China does in some ways believe Africa is the next hot thing. They kind of correct me if I'm wrong, Bibi and others refer to Africa as the next China, and they mean that as a sort of in a positive context that you're the next big growth engine on an economic percentage basis, and that's what I agree with them on that, and that's well intended and positive, and that's why they're willing to make a lot of these investments, and they're unfortunately adding a bunch of maybe some dark clauses in some of those deals, but nonetheless, it's like the underlying premise is actually kind of respect. They're actually there's a connotation of respect to the proposition.
Can I?
And
The
it
other thing
also
that
and
I've
it
noticed
also
real
Can I
quick.
say
Happened
something?
from the Russian side in Africa, which is the complete opposite. I don't know if you heard about the Wagner group. It's from Putin, basically a militia that you can hire for all these nice uh, government leaders in Africa that are being hired. Uh, and it's really a governmental Russia-led company that they can hire to basically terrorize their population and win against any upsurge against them. And they are currently, like for years now, doing horrific crimes against humanity in Africa, and they are getting more and more power and hired by more and more of those government officials because they are very effective to terrorize the population, and they are highly controlling mines, gold mines, diamond mines, and all kinds of mines, and people are constantly being killed, tortured, raped by this Wagner group. And Vice Media just had on Showtime a short a journalist. She went there to interview them. I think they never let anyone interview them directly on African ground. So yeah, if you have time to watch it, it's the most recent episode. It's really shocking, and they are basically, they continue to win over so many governments in Africa. They will be controlling the continent in a very opposite way.
two
This is
two
Robert, real
things
quick.
on that one. So sorry, go ahead.
No, go on, Macy, and then I'll go.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. I was just going to add into Katrina. There are two things why African leaders are supporting Russia. Quite not all of them, but some. a good number. One is that Russia has been known for supporting African independence. They have done quite a lot, whether they did it materially or resource wise, but they were firmly on the side of Africa being decolonized. So a lot of African leaders from that history are actually fond of that. So if you walk around in Ethiopia, that's what you would hear, and a lot of African countries, that they were the one that helped them in the drive for decolonization of European colonizers. That's one. And the second one is also during the Cold War, the East versus the West. A lot of African countries, including Ethiopia, were on the east side, and a Russia system supported materially, especially with military, where military leaderships have survived for years until it collapsed in 1991, including Ethiopia, Somalia, you name it, a lot of countries. So I think because of that, they do have a firm hold in Africa, even though during, after the 91 falling apart of communism and countries changing into a little bit into democracy, but they continued into supplying of military equipment and things like that. That did help some leaders to stay in power and also control the population. So because of that historical connection, that's why they have a good hold of African leaders.
No, but this is not good. This is mercenary company, Wagner. They don't even want to be associated with that name anymore. That has been associated with many massacres and mass rape in Africa. This is not like just supplying some materials. This is Russian militia terrorizing the population and being involved in massacres and being hired by governmental officials first, but then they take over and control. Everyone is afraid of them. And please read the articles about this Wagner company and mercenary company.
Okay, this is Rob. A couple of things real quick. Number one, mercenaries have existed since the dawn of time, and I'm not going to say they're all good or bad. Wagner is not the only group out there, and a number of the groups, once they get bad media, they change their names. There are Colombian mercenaries that have been used that are considered highly effective. There are Russian, there are American. There, if you look back in the 70s, there were tons of South African. So they're all over. So where someone is willing to pay, they are willing to show up. So mercenaries are everywhere. The other
Yeah,
thing, back to
but
Africa,
not
relating to life,
mercenary
relating
is
to,
linked to massacres and
there's plenty of massacres out there on a number of them. I'm not going to,
but
just let me
this is
finish real quick.
on the radar of the EU and the UN, like this company specifically, because they are so horrific. You can please inform yourself before you like downplay what is happening.
I'm
Um,
not downplaying you. I'm just giving a history of I'm not going to explain myself, and I'm not downplaying you. I just shared an opinion about mercenaries in
well,
history.
of course we know that mercenaries exist since the Middle Ages. I mean, most of the knights that went over to the Middle East to get the gold were mercenaries, basically. So we all know that.
At this point, go
Back
keep
to
going.
Africa.
Yeah, go.
Back to Africa. Relating to Live Aid, I believe in Live Aid. I think that what's going on in the Ukraine is a great idea. I actually thought what happened in Africa was fine. The issue, what happened afterwards and even before, is there's a number of organizations in the not-for-profit world that mean well, that I don't think actually help with the image that carries on,
Right.
because we still have commercials here saying, hey, help a child, give $1, this, that, and the other. We still
Yeah.
have all these mission groups that go not just to Africa and other places and dig wells. Their intentions are good. The
Right.
thing is, some of that plays into the mind of those of us in business at saying, can they really do certain things? Or we look at the government's balance sheets and we see that they're willing to spend $1 billion or $750 million on weapons, supposedly to defend their borders, but to defend themselves against their own people. And then we go, well, why would we raise 40 million for you for food when you actually have the money to pay for it. So there's
Right.
a lot of different things going on there. That's Rob. I'm out.
By the way, that
I'm sorry, Robert, but I'm sorry that not all aid organizations have good intentions. Most are actually creating job opportunities for themselves. If you look at a lot of aid organizations, 90%, 80% of the money is spent on admin, and just the remainder is being implemented on the ground. This is why 50 years after aid, in Africa, that doesn't seem to make a difference. Yes, they are good when they are solving humanitarian crisis, whether it's drought, whether it is, climate change or whatever, famine in Ethiopia case, a lot of things. But after that, they need to shift, and they're not shifting because they are creating dependency syndrome where they would be able to
mm,
have jobs forever. They keep on, like, if you ask any
Exactly.
amen to that.
yeah, if you thank you.
Messi, Messi, Tyler, I just want to add on to what Messi just had to saying.
Yep.
There's about 60, UN had figured out that there's about $60 billion worth of aid comes into Africa annually. And one of the problems that I sit back and look at, with that amount of money, why are there still the same problems year in and year out that these agencies are supposed to be making better? If $60 billion is coming into the continent of Africa every year, there should be something more than the average advertisements we see late at night on our televisions.
Yep. Okay. I just want to I say as John said, I appreciate you making that point, Messi. As so, I want to jump into the tech news headlines that we got to run through here. So we got our trusty rusty air horn. Where is it? I left it laying around here somewhere. There it is. Happy Monday, May 9th. Here are big tech headlines at the moment, and then we'll get into the tweets, which kind of circle back on many of the topics we were just going through. But the first big tech headline of today is from Bloomberg. It says Bitcoin falls by up to 4.6% to just under 33,000 US dollars, its lowest level since July 2021, as investors back away from risky investments. Cardano, Polkadot, and others also drop. Bitcoin slumped it to, and what I find interesting about that is how Bitcoin seems to be, in some ways, correlated or paired with the major market indexes, which is just a weird scenario that we find ourselves in. And the question is, when will it untether itself and run the opposite direction? How far down do the markets have to go before Bitcoin, in theory, should be potentially going in the opposite direction? Yada yada yada. Anyone want to make a comment on that?
I have a quick comment.
Go ahead.
So, for the longest period of time, a lot of people have been, sold the idea that, this is going to be your safe haven. This is going to be, inflation proof. This is going to be, politics proof. This is, your DeFi. You're going to be, going in many different directions that is going to protect you from whatever, events are happening around the world. But right now, we're noticing that it's just as affected as anything else. In fact, it's affected more. It's getting, pushed down further than anything else. And people are losing their patience and people are losing their confidence. I know it's extremely polarizing, and I understand that there are, wealth to be made there. A lot of people are making money, but it's not for the faint of heart. These things can, volatile, violently. I mean, jump up and down, like in a matter of days, in ways that can completely, destroy all gains that you have made over months of, careful following. It scares people. If you have trying to manage a wealth or manage whatever portfolio that you've got, and now you wake up one day and you've lost 5%, 10% of what you're doing, you have to be scared of what's happening here. And if this happens to a specific stock, people will be just flocking away from it. And the same thing is happening here. Treat it as a separate stock. And now all these promises of this being resilient, not for friends, blah blah blah, turned out to be just vapor. And I'm sad for people who lost, a lot of, value in here. I know some people made some money or some in other ways, but I guess it's time to sober up that, this is a very risky business, and, you should really be taking this risk very carefully. It's not for the faint of heart, and it's not for people who are, livelihoods are dependent on making money in these kind of markets. That's what I had to say, and I hope not a lot of people lost a lot of money in doing this. I sympathize with them.
Next topic. Costa Rica's president declares a state of emergency after the Conti ransomware group published 672 gigabytes of data that appears to be from government agencies. Well, I imagine so, or he wouldn't be calling for declaring a state of emergency. The Costa Rican president, Rodrigo Chavez, has declared a national emergency following cyber attacks from ransomware group Conti on multiple government bodies. Okay, next is from CNBC. In an email to staff, Uber's CEO, Dara, says the company, Uber, will cut spending on marketing and incentives and also treat hiring as a privilege and more. So they're going to get lean and mean. And next is from Axios. The White House says that 20 internet service providers, including Verizon, Comcast, and Charter, have agreed to offer $30 per month, 100 megabits per second internet service to low-income families. And that's ostensibly good on the face of it, but you have to keep in mind there's often unintended consequences to every good action like this, especially actions where the government is becoming a bit of a market maker in some sense or another, like student loans. And there was a really interesting deep dive on that topic in the latest All In podcast, especially that was kind of led by David Sachs in that one, where he breaks down how that we got ourselves into this weird situation with incredibly high costs of education, and universities are getting astronomical. And at some part was exacerbated by the fact that the U.S. government was providing essentially free loans to all the students. And that drove up the prices of attending those schools, just because the schools knew you could get free loans to attend those schools. And so here we are with all of these. The price of education has skyrocketed and whatever. And, who knows what the second order and third order effects will be of the U.S., the White House kind of through the executive branch signing executive orders or whatnot without having Congress debate. This is the importance of Congress debating things rather than executive orders, by the way. And yeah, on the face of it, it's great. Of course, we want people to have access to cheap internet, of course. Just like we want students to have access to universities, of course. But, by the way, the podcast goes on to make an even stronger point, which is we now find ourselves in 2022 with a whole lot of graduates of previously esteemed universities with degrees that are not necessarily very valuable in terms of the skills of being there's a whole lot of degrees out there that strain credibility in terms of the values, the value that they bring to society. All kinds of studies of all kinds, anything that has studies at the end of it should possibly be drawn into consideration here, because when you have somebody who spent 4 years of their life, and more importantly now have $150,000 worth of debt that's going to linger over them forever, because even filing bankruptcy doesn't remove student debt, by the way. It's the only thing that doesn't go away and follows you forever. And now you got a whole generation of people begging for student debt to be erased, because they feel that education wasn't worth it, or else they wouldn't be asking for that debt to be erased. And that debt is lingering over them because they can't erase it, because there's no skills in the job market that's going to help them pay back that loan that they took. And that's part of the interesting predicament that is pushing on the national fabric of things at the moment, so much so that you now have the Democrat Party Is the party contemplating erasing the student debt because they know that that'll likely win them a whole lot of votes going into the next election? And now that's where shit gets rocky. And now that's where you don't want to. That's the situation you don't want to be in, where you have parties making favors to their voters. That's where you start looking like not the light on the hill of a country. You're starting to look like,
Well, it's populist. It's populist sort of policies, isn't it?
right. So it's the kinds of things that we look down on in other countries, and we should, and everyone should look down on that type of behavior. And America should pause for a second. And I'm begging people on the left side to pause for a second and realize that that's the type of behavior you would criticize in any kind of country. So even though it might benefit you yourself in the short term or whatever. And that's the hardest kind of inward reflection to do. Anyway, the next is from CoinDesk. They say they have sources that Instagram will launch an NFT pilot with Ether, Polygon, Solana, and Flow integrations on Monday, that's today, in the US, and will not charge users for sharing NFTs. And Adam Mosseri, the CEO of Instagram, did a little video and posted it to Twitter. And I'm retweeting it right now from our friend Frank in the audience who found that. And Adam says on Twitter that NFTs on Instagram 1 hour ago. He made it official. So it's no longer a rumor. It's no longer sources. We have our own sources. And the CEO of Instagram is an hour ago made a video. And he says, this week we're beginning to test digital collectibles with a handful of U.S. creators and collectors who will be able to share NFTs on Instagram. There will be no fees associated with posting or sharing a digital collection on Instagram. And that's kind of cool. Kudos to them for not having any fees to deal with anything like that. That's awesome. And the question is, what will be the best use cases? Because this is an important moment. By the way, I would argue, I'm going to make a little prediction, that 5 years from now, we'll look back on this little Instagram headline that we just read 5 seconds ago as either the moment that added serious credibility, or NFTs will either find their utility use case here or kick the can down the road, and it still might take more time to really find some legit use case that people really stick to. And by the way, it was not obvious at all that Twitter was going to stick. And by the way, I used to get in very heated debates with journalist friends of mine about the actual value and utility of Twitter. And people said, well, no, it's just a bunch of people taking photos of their dinner. I don't care what people had for dinner. I said, no, you idiot. Eventually, that's what it was at the time. In the first few months of Twitter, it was a lot of that. And their point is valid. I said, but eventually, notable people are going to come on the platform and use it to say notable things. And that's going to be very newsworthy and important. And of course, you're threatened by it because you're a journalist, and it's going to cannibalize your whole profession and your degree that you spent $150,000 on at Northwestern or what have you. And that has happened, and we are there now. So the question is, will NFTs get there? Will there be the right people coming on and doing the right things to take it to that level? Or is it just going to be people sharing their dinner like Twitter struggled with for many months, and people understandably assumed that it wasn't going to go anywhere, because it's not yet totally obvious to everybody that NFTs, in this sense of like on Instagram, that there's going to be some hallelujah, Jesus, aha moment that's going to cause everyone to start doing these digital collectibles.
Well,
Well, this
just
is the
quickly on this,
pilot, right? Yeah, I was going to say this is the pilot, right? Because if they had chosen to do this on Facebook, I'd say, oh, this is dead on arrival. But
Right.
here, particularly if they're curating specific creators to do this and
Right.
they're doing it at no charge, I'm considering this the learning curve, right? Teaching other creators how to leverage this platform, how to use NFTs. And then 5 years down the line, that's when they monetize and they'll be the first to move. So if NFT has a successful rate or a success chance, I'd say Instagram is your best place to do it because of the kind of users that use Instagram. So I think this is going to be successful.
is what I'm saying. Yeah,
I would like to.
there's a chance that it will have its breakout moment here, and we'll see some very creative people doing some very creative shit, and that'd be great. That would be fantastic. But there's a chance that it won't have its breakthrough moment, and that means it might take a while for another generation of another platform to give rise to another opportunity to have its kind of hallelujah moment. Go ahead, Carl. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's right, man. I was just going to say, Instagram is the most interesting case for this because it's the platform that has had content piracy issues to NFTs more than any other platform. You've got artists on there that have had. There was a story. I'm trying to find the name of it. I can't remember the name of the artist who went onto OpenSea and found 85,000 illegally copied versions of her art as NFTs. She'd never entered the NFT market, and a lot of this is coming from Instagram. So you've got others. So, DeviantArt has had something like 300,000 removal. They put through that many removal requests to the like of OpenSea and whatnot because people have pirated the content off of there and then sold it as NFTs. But Instagram is the target for most of these scams. So if you can lock that down, if the thing I would like to say is that for Facebook, for Meta to get this right, is they need to really handle the piracy issue. If they could do it in house, if they can do proper checking of when somebody's posting an NFT on there, depending on how it's hosted, are you the actual owner? Is this a very clear duplication of somebody else's original content that has been previously uploaded to the network? How easy is it as a creator to actually put through a request for something to be removed? If you want to, put through a support issue, if you think somebody else is pirating your content, that's how to do it. Because you've got a load of serious artists that could make some wonderful, wonderful content that might actually be valuable through both its rarity, its social status, and also its objective beauty. Well, they don't want to get into it because this is the wild, wild west. So ironically, what we kind of need here is a little bit of internal regulation from Meta to make this a safe marketplace. And I think that will also lessen the amount of fraud that you see on places like OpenSea, because if you could just go to Instagram and you can not only buy these but also follow the original artist as well and see new content that are releasing, why would you go to OpenSea? Why would you go anywhere else? So they need to get that right. They need to lock it down, and really they need to put the artists and the creators first, not prioritizing their own sales or advertising the market or anything like that first. It's protecting the creators first, in my mind.
Yeah, I'm with you there. So the next big topic is okay. Here we go. New York Times. Tesla stock has fallen 24% since Elon Musk disclosed his Twitter stake, as investors worry about the deal's structure, Twitter becoming a distraction, and more. The chief executive's debt load, his divided attention, and Twitter's own challenges could all take a toll on his electric car company. I have no take on that.
Hi, I did share this sentiment earlier this week and even prior to the news about Elon investing in um, Twitter, because a lot of investors are not only concerned about the monetary impact, but also the lack of clear goals and how it's affecting Tesla and its production and FSD and everything else. And nonetheless, he may have a plan. Oh, I think Dr. Francine, you are unmuted in the bathroom. Somebody can mute her.
Got it.
So thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Not only that the price value that was offered to acquire Twitter was very high, according to some analysts who are also investor in Tesla, but people and shareholders are very concerned because they were all hoping for FSD and other dreams that were supposed to be delivered in time, and now that goalposts keep on shifting, the deliveries of the Model X are keep on extending, and how Twitter is playing a huge role in terms of not only distraction but dispersion of monetary, and other like people related uh, I think Elon Musk have to take uh, uh, some sort of direction, some sort of decision in terms of how he's spreading himself thin and affecting many companies that are associated with his vision. And the investors are really concerned about what's happening to Tesla, and stocks are showing that sentiment. And he also promised not to have another sale on Tesla accounts, Tesla stocks, but he did,
Right.
you know.
Right. However, how much do we think if it's down 24%, assuming that the Twitter thing never happened, right? Imagine Elon never made an offer to Twitter. And so remove that whole topic off the table. Considering how much the markets have gone down, how much do we think Tesla would have gone down anyways? And then subtract the difference, meaning I think it's very reasonable to say that Twitter would have gone down 20, Tesla could have gone down 20% anyways. The fact that it's gone down 24%, so then could we say that 4% of it is due to the Twitter sale? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but don't you think that the selling off of the stocks by Elon Musk has caused a decline instead of just the, you know, how much the selling off of the shares have impacted this loss?
So, Tyler, to your point, the NASDAQ over the last month, that's not necessarily perfectly coincident with the Twitter stuff, but over the last month, the NASDAQ is down 18% and Twitter is down 18%. So,
Precisely. Well, yeah, the whole, most of,
exactly the same percentage.
right.
Yeah.
That's my point. Is how
And
much of
Twitter's
that,
up 4% in that period,
right?
just for
How
comparison.
much of that 24% is actually due to the Twitter element inside of Tesla? That is my, right.
Ignorable amount in my mind.
Potentially, we don't know. Is the honest answer, but it's hard to tease out. But I don't think it's that much. I think there's a lot of other factors predominantly, but yeah, maybe to some degree. But of course, the New York Times can't
Yeah,
not.
New York Times is doing that, but Tyler, have in the past Tesla followed Nasdaq and the market trends?
Well,
Normally, Tesla
here's my
rises above.
point. If the New York Times should not be writing stories like that, they can't help themselves because it's a chance to double bang, the two things that they, like to bang. Twitter and Elon Musk. It's a double banger, the double bagger. Like they get to, throw two shades simultaneously. It's just too attractive of a story for them not to cover. However, it, it just saddens me because I like living in a world where we can say, well, hey, we're looking for truth. We're in desperate need of truth. We're in desperate needs of dependable signposts of truth. And the New York Times used to be as solid of a signpost of truth as there could be. And it was like, well, you and I think this, you think this, and I think that, and we disagree. But hey, here's this New York Times article, and at least they've invested in a bunch of smart people who tried to figure out what's really going on. But when this is the problem with stories like this, is like, because they jump on this story of Tesla stock falling 24% because Elon Musk is investing in Twitter. It's like, guys, now I'm less likely to use you as a signpost of truth, and that's a problem.
I
In
think if they had written a story that said Tesla has fallen 24% and stopped right there and eliminated this subordinate clause, which gave their idea of why, they would be much more reputable
right,
because they have to report on the fact that it happened. But the
right,
fact that we're having this conversation about why, I would say Aram is right, and you're right, and whoever said the market was right. It's a little of everything.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a superposition of all a weighted sum of all these things. So we
right,
just don't know the weighting.
right. Well said, Ben. The next is from the Wall Street Journal. Says they have sources that as China restricts access during the pandemic, Apple is relying more and more on local engineers using live streaming and AR to help U.S. staff monitor progress. Because the U.S. staff used to fly in to do business. and because of the restrictions, they're not able to. So now they're relying on live streaming and AR to as a lesser. God, my brain is foggy, and I need to go take a COVID test. But the
Well, Tyler, my cousin is also a part of that kind of, workforce, and he is working remotely. And even if you want to go back and travel, they are like, no, there's no need. You can work remotely using AI and stuff. So the trend is there. I think it's helping the companies.
so we get the point anyway. I was just stretching for words there. The next is from TechCrunch that a company called Pyramid, which develops business intelligence and analytics tools, raises 120 million at a billion valuation. Who cares? Next, an interview with SoftBank COO Marcelo about his current relationship with Masayoshi Son and blah blah blah. Who cares? Mark Gurman at Bloomberg, the resident geek at Bloomberg's has done an opinion piece. It says Apple has the technical chops to safely open up its NFC chip for third-party payment apps. Yeah, no shit, it does. Matter of fact, it's easier to leave it open than to close it in some ways. And the main reason it is not doing it is revenue. Oh, Jesus Christ. Captain Obvious over here. Gee, you think, Mark? Wait a minute. Mark, hold on a second. Mark Gurman from Bloomberg has this incredible hot take that Apple is not opening its NFC chip in its iPhones and only using it for themselves, and they're doing it for revenue purposes. Like, really, Mark? Apple's latest antitrust battle is all about Apple Pay and how the company reserves the tap to pay feature for its own services. And the main reason is not the main reason it's not opening it up to its competitors is because of revenue. Well, there you go, Mark. You figured it out. Well done. You really got them this time. We were scrambling to figure out why Apple was not sharing the NFC chip with all of its competitors, and Mark is doing an opinion piece to let us all know he's figured it out. He thinks it's money related. It might be financially related. Well done, Mark. You cracked the case.
Sherlock
Wow.
Holmes, really.
What, what a crack.
Again,
Yeah.
I'm a little confused about this because I use the Apple NFC chip
Yeah.
on an iPhone 13, I think we are.
Yeah.
So it's up to date, latest software. I use it every day to open doors around my house. So I
Yes.
don't see any technical reason you can't use it for payments the same way.
Precisely right.
What I do is
Yeah.
I don't understand it. I mean, I'm using it daily, so I don't
Right.
understand
Yeah.
why you can't modify that for payments. I'm
Right.
confused.
No, you could, but they just they're understandably
They
greedy.
want to control the monetization.
Or
They
is it
are.
a terms and conditions issue rather than a technical issue?
Yes. No, they're just not letting.
Oh, okay.
They're not letting financial competitors. They're not letting
Okay.
people competing in the financial space use the NFC. They're letting door lock manufacturers use it and non-financial apps use it. But financial apps aren't able to use it because those apps would benefit fantastically, many of them, because they were earlier movers, and Apple's a bit of a laggard on the fintech side, on the software side, and they have the hardware advantage. This really shows you how much of a huge advantage the hardware, and there ain't that many of them. It's Apple and Google and a few others, especially the operating system ones, and Microsoft comes to mind. And that, by the way, that's why the three of them all getting together on this shared passwordless identity system, whatnot, causes alarm bells for some people, like our friend Nicholas. Um, and Apple knew that this other software companies can run circles around them, but if they don't have their own hardware and they're not able to use Apple's hardware, then this is let's slow lethargic Apple kind of maintain their it's kind of like some weird form of tech privilege in a weird way. I mean,
It's
to bat.
controlling their ecosystem. And they
Yeah.
Yeah,
have
but
a very, very lucrative ecosystem. If you can tap into that, you tap into multiple users. So they've been controlling this strategically for a while building up the resources to potentially compete with fintech, and that's smart.
Right. And our friend Michael, if he was here, and he is here in spirit, would say, "Well, it's their goddamn phone. They have the right to do that, and in some sense, they do." And not in the EU, they won't. The EU is not going to let them get away with that. And
But what I'm saying is, must only be terms and conditions stopping it now. I don't use a manufacturer's door lock. I've made my own door
right,
lock, and I use the
right,
NFC app. I could
yep,
make a payment system on the phone now without
yep.
downloading any software, just using Siri shortcuts. So
Mm-hmm.
it must just be the only way to stop it must be terms and conditions. But they wouldn't even be able to detect it half the time. So you're literally only stopped by terms and conditions. I could easily have done that by mistake to take payment, but I don't have a service I sell in person. But if I did, I could have done it by mistake and then be in breach of their terms and conditions because I never checked.
Next up from Axios, if Roe versus Wade gets overturned, any location and search data about users collected by tech companies might be used in abortion-related criminal prosecutions. It's the headline from Axios. And Wired has a related article saying that security news data brokers track abortion clinic visits for anyone to buy. And yeah, location data is going to get a lot more interesting. For Eric Stallwell, who's a politician, says if you're pregnant and suffer the trauma of a miscarriage, Republicans are trying to make it so that prosecutors seeking can obtain your internet search or other data to determine whether a provider delivered illegal services. Google Play bans downloading of paid apps and updates to paid apps in Russia over sanctions after halting purchases of paid apps and subscriptions. So Google continues to tighten the screws in the Russian version of Google Play Store, the App Store. Apple, no doubt, will do the same. And some tech workers in Latin America advocate for Spanish language training and Spanish programming language, even as the best IT jobs are in English. And that's kind of one of these weird little dirty secrets, is that programming is more English than anything else. And now you've got a whole lot of Latin American programmers advocating for a Spanish-based programming language, was one of the really interesting articles I saw recently. And I think that's the WhatsApp announces message reactions support for sharing files up to 2 gigabytes in size. Holy shit, that's big files for WhatsApp. And is rolling out the ability to add up to 512 people to a group. That's a very large group in a WhatsApp message. And as
That's
Bloomberg,
quickly on that before you move on. This is a real push for enterprise stuff. I think like they're also bringing out the concept of nesting chats,
yep,
group chats, spaces. We've
yep,
already got
yep,
business being run out. I've been part of a number of companies which actually use WhatsApp as the internal official chat. It's
yep,
moving ever closer and closer to this. And if you can send two thoughts on this: one, a 2 gigabyte file size is more than enough for almost most company documents that you
yep,
might want to pass. You can also share media really interestingly on this, really easily with 2 gigabytes. I mean, that's an episode
yep,
of most things. So piracy is going to be fun. If you can have 500 people in an encrypted chat, you can really easily share pirated content. So this is going to be super interesting how they manage that and
yes,
manage it while also trying to repair their appearance on privacy.
yes.
So this
And
this
they've
is going to be really. I wouldn't be surprised if they have some hench integration with all of this coming into the metaverse as well through, because their next headset Cambria is, they've already said multiple times, it's work focused. It's focused around being used to replace your laptop and replace everything else. That's where they want to go with this. And to do that, you need a stable messaging system where you can group people intelligently and that you can share documents between them. So I really think they're pushing to try and create a system to replace things. Like, I'm not saying they'll be successful, but replace things like quick file sharing platforms, but also things like Google Enterprise.
or things like Slack.
If I may
Or
jump in
Zoom.
quickly on
Yeah,
that,
yep,
what I think they're trying to do is to match up with existing other platforms that are competing with them and stealing, I guess, customer share from them.
I agree.
I got the beta for WhatsApp, and the new features are quite good, and they're interesting. They do help a lot with what the applications that you've got. But for now, the reactions are limited to, I believe, 5 or 6 of the reactions. They will open them up, and they are also trying to bring some sort of commonality with what you have in other platforms that they've got, like Instagram, where you're able to provide, your own. In the direct messages, you're able to provide some level of reactions and multiple of them. So they need to evolve quickly because in iMessage you already have this, in other platforms you already have this, and WhatsApp is the last one to bring reactions to the messaging. So it's not just for the enterprise. Maybe the larger files is for the enterprise, but Telegram is kicking them really badly recently. And if they do not evolve quite quickly, people don't have loyalty for any one of these applications. Well, they'll just jump ship and go somewhere else in a heartbeat. So I think that's the main driver over this from Mr. Zuckerberg. And I love my plane.
Oh, just a couple more of the tech story, or one more tech story today. Apple's director of machine learning, named Ian Goodfellow, is leaving due to its return to work policy, saying in a note that more flexibility would have been the best policy. So that's cost him. That's kind of a notable
It's
loss.
it's
Imagine
a
if you
new
basically
reality.
quitting a work in a huff because they don't want to come into work and it becomes international news. I mean, that's the sign you got some really cushy gig there.
But he's also saying that it's not just he, that his staff feel the same. They're concerned about I think that what his concern was that they're asking for 1 day a week, then gradually 2, then gradually 3, but no real efforts on the pandemic concerns that the staff have raised. And so he's taking a step of leadership in his mind by going ahead and saying, I'm stepping down in one accord with the voice of my staff. I don't understand where he thinks leaving is going to make the point, but we'll see because a lot of leadership have been leaving, and I think that he's hoping that this will just build on that momentum.
Fun little context for Apple real estate politics. So, as everyone knows, one of the last things that Steve Jobs did before he died was he says, "Hey, city of Cupertino, we want to build this giant floating orb donut spaceship thing. It's going to be the biggest thing ever." And Johnny Ive's like, "I got the biggest glass for this," and there's a whole big old thing around it. So they got all the things together and they presented internally before at Apple, and people were like, "Whoa, it's so innovative" and everything else. The semiconductor team, that the guys that ended up making the M1 processor and this other stuff, they took one look at the design and they said, "Yeah, frack that, no. If we do that, we quit." And they're like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "We don't want open office. We can't get work done." And they're like, "But it's like the future." And they're like, "No, we quit if you do that." And so if you actually look at the the Apple campus, if you look at the spaceship, I think it's in the lower right hand corner. Essentially, if you're looking north to the upper side, there's this giant square building that is literally just the traditional building with the most, like, there's offices where you open and close doors because for the semiconductor engineers, you're like, we cannot work any other way. And it's an interesting kind of contrast to the image that Apple presents. Now, the thing is, Apple spent a fortune on this building. It's one of the most expensive buildings on Earth. Like, it's larger than the Pentagon. When that was a mega project in itself. So the idea of them building putting a bunch of money on this, and then no one's in it, is kind of a bit embarrassing. And there's a number of other corporate people have a similar situation, and we've all talked together about that before with asset bubbles and such. But I just want to bring a little anecdote about Apple's internal politics. When the head of AI says, "Hey, I don't want to go into work," it'll be a test to see, do they have more of a say in the real estate politics than the semiconductor team does. We'll find out very shortly.
Okay,
Make it
so
a
now
theme park. They can make a
uh,
fortune by
You
making
know,
it a theme park.
yeah.
we
So,
get to
so
go.
another thing is, it looks like this is the new norm where people are quitting over going back to the office. Airbnb is offering their team to just work from anywhere. Executives are, leaving companies over this, and I believe a bunch of associates in some other company are also threatening to leave their jobs if they are forced back into the office. This
Real
is
estate
something that
asset bubble's gonna pop. It's gonna be big.
yeah. No, no, no.
I've been waiting for it.
No, maybe. But again, a lot of people are opting to continue with this mode of operations, and I don't see why companies won't take this advantage to their advantage. They're, they're saving so much money in real estate assets and insurances and providing, whatever services that they need for employees to be on site. This is an opportunity for a lot of businesses to really downsize their offices and go completely remote
It's
and
not the
basically reap the benefits.
it's it's not
I'll
the
add to
company, it's the
that.
banks. The banks are the ones that essentially are leaning heavily on this because their exposure on their balance sheet is astounding. So they're going to use every amount of subtle influence they have on all these corporation boards. You're going to see institutional shareholder services and some of these other ones that have proxy votes everywhere. They're going to lean heavily, saying, "Hey guys, it's time to go back to work because we can take if we spent like 20 years worth of mortgage on this thing, we can take a little bit up front, but there's only so many years we can go without having rents paid on this." That's the sort of thing that they start to get very nervous about. So it's the banks that are going to put on this heavily, not necessarily the corporations, but the corporations, because they're so heavily leveraged, will de facto act in the same interest as the banks will. But you're going to see local corporate politics play in that big way in the near future.
Yeah, I'm not sure
But
I
I'll say
agree with
this
that.
one point, and that is this is the opportunity for businesses to put their money where their mouth is and really impact climate change by decreasing carbon footprint. We'll see if money wins or if rationale wins in this argument.
I think it's important to remember that when you are in the same space as other people, there's a different type of collaboration that occurs. And although, Zoom and Teams and all of these things that have popped up over the last few years have helped tremendously in team building and working together, there is definitely a different type of outcome that I have personally understood over the years when you are physically in the presence of other people collaborating together, even if it's just walking by someone's office and remembering something and popping in and having a conversation about it, there is a lot of added value to it. Now, don't get me wrong, I am of the opinion I would prefer to stay home, absolutely. I think that quality of life has dramatically improved from people staying at home, but it doesn't mean that you don't lose something within the workspace by not having people present.
I
If
agree.
I may jump quickly on the end of that. So, if you notice what the teens are doing, the younger generation, throughout their days, which they had to deal with the pandemic and like in absence, in a way away from Zoom for work and school, what they're doing is that they're spending most of their day on Discord or something else where they have their mics on, they've got their cameras on sometimes, and they are with their team doing whatever that they're trying to do all in like like a small unit, and they can be geographically completely apart, but they'll still be doing this, and they have adopted to towards what we've had the past couple of years in this new way. And if you notice them, they will have this sort of group dynamic that people used to have in their offices, but through the technology that they've got. And I think it's working great for them. They're really at ease with this new norm that they've created, and they're being social. They're communicating. They add people to their group, and they get people out of the group and all that stuff. They're all dynamically working, and this is something that the businesses have not adopted yet. So now you've got structured meetings where you will pop into a meeting and then you will leave. There's no this full day where you're on this specific call. You mute yourself if you have to, but most of the time you're on. People hearing the kids in the background, and you're talking to other folks in your team, and you enjoy what you just mentioned of popping into someone's office and, oh, by the way, I just remembered this, and I've got wanted to check with you. um I hope maybe our generation is going to start learning from the younger generation of how to become at ease with this digital world that we're living in. They're the digital natives, and we're the immigrants, and hopefully at some point maybe we'll learn a thing or two from them. Sorry
I,
for taking too
I
long.
so agree with that. I just wanted to say, and that's exactly the experience we've had with since pre-pandemic. that this is, when one says it's the same with the whole, well, nothing is like interacting so-called in real life for what we mean in person, but to them this is in person. I'm 100% with you there.
But it also depends on the type of work that they're doing. I consult for chemical manufacturing companies, and it would be impossible if people didn't show up to produce the products, right? And having upper management there monitoring the day-to-day activities and being involved in decision making on the floor is still important. And that gets lost in manufacturing, in tech, in certain companies that I consult with for app development and metaverse development. Everything is done through Discord, Slack, online. People are all over the world, so there is no prime office for everyone to get together and collaborate. So it really depends on what type of entity you're talking about and how work is produced within that company.
That's so true, of course, and so far, I've looked at healthcare, etc. But it's this when one's talking about the general, and I think Tyler, whoever started the conversation with large corporates and the banks, and the reason why going so-called back to the office, that's for it seems to be everywhere, and of course you're right with that. It depends on what you do. As we are now in the world, and that's changing all the time as well.
Also, the in-person communications has a lot more body language, facial expression. I don't think that currently the Zoom, the Meet technologies are actually able to replace. So that part is actually very important in communication qualities as well.
I
But
agree.
if
I
you,
actually only do Zoom meetings with my video on, regardless if anyone else has the video off, because it's so important to watch body language and expression, and we're losing that by having Zoom meetings where people don't even have their cameras on. It gets even further lost.
I
On the
agree with
climate
that, but
change,
oh, sorry, I
We
was
got to pause. We got to pause. We got to pause. We got to pause.
okay.
I've got a hard stop in 15 minutes, and we've got 27 tweets that I've cherry picked out of the hundreds people have shared it since we met last. So that means 30 seconds per tweet. So work with me here and say the words 30 seconds per tweet. Everyone say that out loud in their head. 30 seconds per tweet, 30 seconds per tweet. Here we go. We have 27 in 15 minutes. So don't go on a diatribe about any one of these. Keep your comments very brief. Here we go. In no particular order. From Pat. She found one that Facebook has built a massive new language AI and it's giving it away for free. Facebook's parent company has a new, bigger, better version of GPT-3. By the way, this is mentioned in the latest podcast by Sam Harris with his special guest, Eric, who was the CEO at Google for the first 10 years or so, Eric Schmidt. And Eric is very interested in AI. In fact, he just wrote a book about it. And they talk about that's a really worthwhile podcast if you want to get a handle on the state of where AI is at the moment, kind of broad overview. So the next article, we're keeping on time here at 30 seconds each with Katerina from New Scientist. It says an obesity drug achieves an average weight loss of 24 kilograms per person in clinical trials. An average weight loss of 24 kilograms. That is tremendous. That's nearly 50 pounds of an average weight loss for a new anti-obesity drug or an obesity drug. That's fantastic.
Let's hope the
The
side
next,
effects don't include death.
yeah, let's hope the side effects are minimal. The Katerina found another one that researchers reveal possible molecular signature in the blood for suicide in people with depression. Researchers have identified a blood biomarker that predicts the risk of suicide in patients with major depressive disorder. That
That
would
is a
be fantastic.
very scary genetic marker to search for and to be available to the public. That could have some worrying consequences.
Yeah, and also some very incredibly helpful, and hence that's such a great example of the simultaneous utopia dystopia of tech and data, right in a nutshell, right there.
I mean, we have a surging rate of suicide, especially in tweens and teenagers, of I think a 400% increase in the last years. I'm sorry, I'm exercising. So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, we really have to do something about it. And suicide, it's really hard to predict. So, yeah, that's
Yep.
amazing.
The next is also from Katerina, that a bacterial enzyme converts CO2 into carbon compounds. That's fantastic, by the way. That's exactly what we need. We need a lot of CO2 converted into carbon and oxygen, so that CO2 is bad, carbon not so bad. That's the problem, is we're converting carbon into CO2. That's the problem.
There's a lot of
We
these technologies for both carbon capture and plastic converting. The two problems are always the same: so scalability and
Right.
environmental sort of stability. A lot of these work really, really well in a tiny, narrow temperature range, and as soon as it goes outside of that and you try and scale it, the microbes die and it just doesn't work. So,
Yep.
kudos on the tech, but is it scalable?
Right.
No, it is scalable. I actually had the guest speaker, Dr. Liang. It's a Chinese company that are also working now in the US and around the globe. They started scaling it. They could actually fuel a plane from the US to Europe with the alcohol, and they are scaling it because they engineer the bacteria in a way that they are more efficient, and it's a continuous production. So it's not like regular fermentation process where you have to they do it one time, you have to exchange them and do it one time. They continuously produce for years, so it's really amazing.
I just shared the tweet to the Tech News Twitter account for those who want to deep dive on that. The next, also from Katerina, psychologists found a striking difference in intelligence after examining twins. A new study of monozygotic twins, that means identical twins, raised apart. That's the awesome rare situation when that happens, because for researchers they get to study the nature versus nurture thing more thoroughly. And so monozygotic twins raised apart, that's when you can really tell what nurture did. um, in South Korea, and the United States provides unique insight, obviously, into how genetic, cultural, and environmental things. So, what they're finding is a striking difference in intelligence after examining twins raised apart, who are monozygotic twins, identical twins raised apart, and the difference in their intelligence, which means that nurture plays a significant role in intelligence, if I understand
Environment,
correctly.
But not
environment.
always. Not always,
No,
because it
I
depends
just mean
on the birth
I'm not.
as
I'm
well.
not. I'm saying according to the article.
Yeah, yeah. I just want to point out that it also depends on how, the birth and whether or not both were receiving the same amount of nutrients and oxygen and all of that.
It matters how you measure intelligence as well. Like literally, you can take two studies from the same campus, and the way that they measured that and the metrics that they used are completely different. So we still can't agree on how to measure intelligence.
Next is also from Katarina. She was on a roll today. A factory reset for the brain could cure anxiety and drinking behavior. Gene editing could be a potential new treatment for anxiety and alcohol use disorder in adults who indulge in binge drinking as adolescents. Yeah, genetic editing is going to be able to do a whole lot of crazy stuff like that. And the question is, what will be the unintended consequences and second and third order effects and whatnot that will be tricky to predict. The next is from Monica, that the Indian finance minister, who is Nirmala Sitharaman, on Saturday flagged anonymity as an inherent risk in blockchain technology and called for taking precaution ahead of the launch of the CBDCs in India. And wouldn't that be nice if our friend Nicholas was here to remind us of the importance of and exactly how this is all shaking down? Is the states are going to demand, as this Indian finance minister is doing, the end of anonymity with the future of states controlling CBDCs and whatnot. Monica also has the next one, that Google is establishing a Web3 team within its cloud unit, noting that it is a market that is already demonstrating tremendous potential, a Google executive explained. And I have to save that article myself for my event coming up next week in Stockholm, which is all about Web3. and which you can find on my Twitter bio, the link to that one. The next is from Jeff G about Taiwan. And here comes an I told you so. 3 predictions in one episode. Is this a new record for me? It says the U.S. State Department, this is from the Taiwan News, U.S. State Department site deletes Taiwan as part of China. Unclear whether modifications reflect the change in U.S.'s official stance on the One China policy and Taiwan sovereignty. The U.S. states and Taiwan, the United States and Taiwan enjoy a robust, unofficial relationship. The United States recognized. Oh, here we go. Oh, the United States Department last week changed the wording on its U.S.-Taiwan's relation website to delete reference to Taiwan as being part of China and removed a statement disavowing Chinese independence. I told you we're going to start poking the panda. Did I not tell you we were going to poke the panda weeks ago? Did I not say we're going to start poking the panda? Did I not say, watch out, we're going to start doing what I also said we did to Putin that provoked him into Ukraine, we're now going to start doing to China, and knowing it's going to actually force them to do something about it. And we're sending...
Have we not been doing this for a long ass time?
And did I not say precisely how we would do it? I said we wouldn't just overtly yell on the front page of the New York Times, America recognizes Taiwan independence. What we're going to start doing is exactly things like this, which are these little slippery whispers that are going to drive China insane. That, by the way, in a court of public opinion, your average person is going to say, if China attacks, they're going to say, whoa, China just attacked a sovereign, independent country, just like Russia's doing in Ukraine. And you can't do that, China. Nobody launched a rocket at you. You can't do that. Yet, if you start poking the panda in this way repeatedly over and over with a sharper and sharper stick and a longer and longer stick, the panda is going to lose its shit and attack. And then the world is going to say, oh, China, you attacked first. You caused this. This is you totally provoked it. And now we have to sanction the living daylights out of you, like we're doing in Russia. And by the way, America would laugh itself silly if that, it's going to get very nasty and very uncomfortable, and supply chains will likely cause mass starvations and have negative consequences even in the U.S. However, that's a calculated risk America is willing to consider because, left unchecked, China and Russia were planning to get the world off of the U.S. dollar. And that's why the U.S. said, oh, you just crossed our red line. You are now dead. You are now in the middle of our crosshairs. We must now take you out because we know what you're up to now. We must now remove you from the chessboard or neutralize you to the best of our abilities. And we are now in the process of doing that.
Hey Tyler, what you're being what's the word? Whatever. You're bullish on this stuff. I want to tell you that maybe you shouldn't be because Palantir, which is a big defense contractor, reported earnings today, and part of their commentary was that the risk of a nuclear event is so much higher than is being presented in the public world that it's almost surreal to watch the coverage, which is pretty much okay. Yeah.
That's a good point. And one of my favorite headlines of the past 12 months that really slipped by everybody was Palantir's gold headline, where they said they're going to start securing their bank account values, cash on hand values into gold, and are willing to accept gold as a form of payment. And they even hinted that it's due to future global instability looking forward. They implicated as their rationale for doing this. And that headline kind of just slipped by and nobody thought much about it. But Palantir has access to potentially more intelligence than most intelligence agencies around the world. And so that kind of fits with what the point Ken's making, which when Palantir says things like that, I think it's worth contemplating at a minimum and
So maybe
taking.
we should be a little bit more careful poking these other nuclear powers. That's,
I agree.
I'm just saying.
Correct.
Yeah,
That's what I was
I
going
agree.
to say because listen, China already anticipated this move. What do you think their response is going to be? They've been hedging on a line quite nicely, not really supporting Russia, but not really standing against them. You do something like this, where potentially any move they make moving forward, even futuristically, would seem aggressive to Taiwan. You're putting them in a corner. What do you think they do? They make the hard decision to line with whom benefits them, and it's not going to be America. So here you go. This is not the best solution.
I have a hard stop right now, so I just got to blast through these. Cal Patel found one from CNBC. A $3.5 billion bet on Bitcoin becoming a reserve currency gets put to the test. A South Korean entrepreneur is betting 3.5 billion on the idea of Bitcoin becoming the reserve currency, and that kind of fits very well with the conversation we're having. Thank you for perfect time.
I
Timed
thought
perfect.
I thought that news was about MicroStrategy when you first mentioned it. Seriously.
Yeah, yeah, it kind of does. Dr. Fran found this one from the New York Times. There is a TikTok challenge we all need to face up to. The social media platforms that hold and shape our attention need to be governed in the public interest. And I got to say, I give the New York Times a whole ton of shit for not taking these TikTok challenges seriously enough and basically ignoring them and actually um, downplaying them is what the New York Times has been doing traditionally. But that's when Taylor Lorenz was there. She's now moved away from the New York Times. But I'm actually going to applaud the New York Times for actually releasing this piece. It's an opinion piece by someone named Ezra Klein, who happens to be the boss over there at Vox Media. But kudos to Ezra for writing this, and to the New York Times for writing it about. And I think the the main statement that he has to make here is how he says how these platforms can, to some degree, shape our global, our national narratives, and as such, it's important that we understand how that's being done under the covers, and that, of course, that's a prickly can of pears to open. But kudos, New York Times, for doing that, and Ezra as well. Glad to see that one. So, and thank you for finding that, Dr. Friend. The next is from Cal Patel, that Facebook is opening a physical store to bring Metaverse closer to reality. Yeah, they got to do that to get your aunt and uncle to test it out, because they're not going to be able to do that at a Walmart. And then Casey found this one, that the new generation of cancer preventing vaccines, you heard that correct, a vaccine that stops cancer, could wipe out tumors before they even have a chance to happen. Shots enter early clinical trials for healthy people at high risk for disease. Let's pray to God that works as intended.
Excellent.
Willie found the next one. I'm surprised nobody mentioned this, that Elon Musk 12 hours ago or 15 hours ago did a very interesting tweet saying, "If I die under mysterious circumstances, it's been nice knowing you all." And he's replying to the threat that he received from the Russian Space Agency director. And his mother said, "This is not funny." And he says, "Because it's Mother's Day, I'm sorry, and I'll do my best to survive and whatever." But
Whatever happened to
yeah,
him coming to Clubhouse and debating Putin on this place? I mean, that would liven this place up quite a bit.
the next is from BB, that Reuters says they have an exclusive that Biden sidelined global energy partners with record emergency oil release. Unilateral action by Washington to address the global supply of price issues risks undermining the U.S. relationship with the IEA. Unilateral action by Washington risks undermining U.S. relationship with the IEA. Biden sidelined global energy partners with record emergency oil release. Yeah, well, he probably had to. He needs to stop the price of energy from going too high too quickly, because that's
Before
how.
midterms.
Yeah, before, exactly right. Well said, Chris. Which is, this is becoming not just a runaway inflation issue, which by extension is a Biden and the Democrats losing forever issue. So they have a very keen interest tied to not letting runaway inflation happen, which means controlling the price of energy, which means releasing the kraken of oil. All other consequences be damned, because they don't want to risk their party losing in the midterms, as Chris just said.
And
The
all
next
those climate activists, essentially, 1,000 voices cry out in terror, and they were suddenly silenced by a flood of oil.
Biden administration announces plan to increase access to affordable high-speed internet. We covered that one earlier.
Maybe they'll actually do it this time. Who knows?
Katerina found one that kids in China can't watch live streams after 10 p.m. anymore. They also can't live stream
They
themselves.
also have authentication for this, and that's a big deal because in America and in European countries, we have essentially the COPA stuff, but the actual authentication is like, you must be 18 to enter. By the way, here's a drop down menu, and you learn that on the first time of, if I do anything beyond the first 18 items here, I can log in. And they went with a very loose enforcement, and then everyone had enough ass covering that they could technically get away with it. China just went for it. No, let's actually authenticate people. Let's do facial identification. Let's have tracking stuff that can actually verify per user. And they're actually enforcing it for kids playing video games, kids watching porn, kids essentially logging on at different internet hours. Anything you want to imagine, they have actual identification for that, and they're actually enforcing it, which is kind of sets a template for when those kids get older. How are they going to demand rights for things they've never gotten to experience themselves? So that's going to be a thing to watch as it develops.
What would be interesting is if someone created that exact item for parents to utilize, not that it would be implemented across the board for all children, from a government perspective, but from a parental perspective, being able to shut everything down at a certain time. If you're tech savvy enough, you know that you could just, how to stop kids from going online, but not necessarily stop them from still using their devices.
Just a little bit of clarity. The reason Elon Musk was threatened by Russia's space agency was providing internet to the Ukrainians, and which is a bit of a sore spot to the Russians. The
For
Jeff,
drone targeting strikes specifically, like is he
yeah,
actively providing military munitions on behalf of the Pentagon with things? So I mean, it's like he's waving that flag. He really wants the SpaceX contracts. He wants NASA for the thing. He wants U.S. government support. So it's like, okay, here's what happens.
Wall Street Journal: Chinese tech giants quietly retreat from doing business with Russia. Firms are pulling back under pressure from U.S. sanctions and suppliers, but stay mum in face of warnings from Beijing. I wish we had more time to dive into that one, so I just retweeted it to the Tech News Twitter account. Thank you to Jeff for that one. Katerina found one about a portable wind turbine that fits in your backpack. That's fucking awesome. Humans have been harnessing the wind for centuries, but a company called Shine, spelled correctly, so I wonder if they actually have any real geeks working there, is a radical departure from large-scale projects like windmills and wind farms. It's a wind turbine that fits in your backpack. You can set it up and harvest energy from the goddamn wind. I love it.
Going to be a pathetic amount of energy, but the thing is, you don't need that much to power modern cell phones. So and especially with the lower power variations. So even though it's a pathetic amount of power, it might actually be enough to be useful for certain applications.
Workers at Apple China plant clash with guards over lockdowns. Hundreds of workers at a technology factory in China clashed with authorities and flooded past isolation barriers. But you don't see any footage of that now, do you? No, and you won't.
But they have all those iPhones in their
Yeah,
pockets. Why aren't they recording it?
Yeah,
you can see within some Telegram groups, but yeah, it's hard to find in public inside. Yeah, but
right.
right now in Shanghai, they like change the rules even more strictly. If you have one positive case in the same floor that you live in, then the whole floor will be drag away to the mobile COVID hospital. So that's the way they keep the zero COVID positive in this community. So
Okay, we're gonna move
the
on.
level of punishment now is
What
on.
what has leaked out of Apple is the iPhone 14 Pro specs have leaked, and it paints a familiar picture. It will deliver two widely different smartphone experiences later this year. What is special about the iPhone 14? Um,
Maybe they'll have the
the
glasses this year.
It will look like their predecessors, featuring the same notch design as the iPhone 13, but Apple will make a significant change to its iPhone strategy this year regarding silicon choices. That means the chips. The iPhone 14 and the 14 Max will get a variation of the A15 Bionic in its current iPhone 13. More RAM might also be in the picture for them. And in fact, there's a new double faster RAM on the horizon as well. I doubt they'll have that ready in time, probably next year. So the phones will feel a whole lot snappier when that one comes out. That's Samsung's faster RAM that's just coming out.
Definitely
Tyler, before you jump to the
DDR5X.
next,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, before you jump to the next one, just for everyone in the room, tech news around the world on Twitter is TNATW. There's been some questions in the chat about where to find these articles.
okay, thank you. So next up, David Crace says from the Harvard Business Review, I'm retweeting this to TNATW, how algorithms could improve primary care. Automated clinical algorithms promise to transform primary care. Clinical algorithms.
Feed us more data.
Yeah, it's just all the whole
The
thing's going to
doctors
become.
are begging to quit entering data for 3 or 4 hours a day to feed these algorithms. They're really begging to please make it stop.
Kiad Arena found one from Vice, and the headline says, "Some faint, some die." People are living through the world's worst heat wave. Roughly 99 million people are surviving record-breaking heat that experts say is nearly impossible to survive. Oh boy, that kind of sounds like what I said was going to happen a year ago, which is we're going to start having uninhabitable regions of the planet with lots of people, and you're going to have lots of climate refugees. Hold on to your horses. The race hasn't even started yet. But I warned you a year ago we're going to have mass migrations of up to 1 billion people due to climate refugeeism. Get ready, here it comes. And by the way, most of them are Muslim. Where are they going to go? You figure
Whenever
it
they
out.
get asked most important inventions of the last 100 years, what's funny is whenever they ask like a world leader this with things, the India world leaders always come back with air conditioning. Full stop. There is no other thing. Air conditioning is the best thing ever.
Worried quantum computers will supercharge hacking. The White House calls for national security memo envisions new. So the White House just figured out what the worrying combination of quantum computers and hacking, and now they're
We went
ringing
over
alarm.
that on Wednesday, right?
Yes, we
NSA
did.
wants
Yeah,
some more funding, and they're asking for civilian side now.
that too. FedEx will start testing a 1,900-pound drone for hauling packages.
Woo!
And yeah, and then last but not least, we did it. Amazon reportedly fires at least 6 new New York managers involved in labor union, according to the New York Times.
Retaliation, Joy. We'll be hearing about this for a while.
These dismissals are regarded as the company's response to the recent unionization victory. Amazon has reportedly fired over a half dozen senior managers who were involved in a New York warehouse union. The
Isn't
firings
Amazon
took
like the
place.
largest employer in USA now? Or they're right behind Walmart. It's like right up
They're
there.
tied with Walmart at $1 million. Yeah. Amazon said the changes were made after evaluating the warehouse's operations and leadership. Quote, part of our culture at Amazon is to continually improve, and we believe it's important to take time to review whether or not we're doing the best we could for our team. The spokesperson said the managers were being, and although that could have been a GPT-3 at this point, we don't know.
The PR
The,
drones. They're the most non-committal non-statement ever.
the manager, it sounds very GPT-3ish, to be fair. The managers were being fired due to an organizational change. 2 employees told the Times. One said that some of the managers had recently received positive performance reviews, paradoxically, and on and on and on. You get the
They'll be sure
idea.
to fix that in the future.
So
Yeah, there
there
goes
you.
a lawsuit.
We did it. We made it through another tech news around the world, and we'll do it again tomorrow. Please do join us and look forward to it. And send in those tech headlines, and we'll connect those dots. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your Monday, wherever you happen to be. And I can't applaud. Oh, there I can. There we go. There it is.
All right, same bad time,
Thanks,
same bad
everyone. Have a
channel.
great day.
Thanks.